Hello, today is Wednesday, January 7th, 2025. Isn't it amazing that we are into the second quarter of the month, right? 1 week has passed, and we are into the second quarter of the month, 7th. Time surely flies really hard, right? Hard. And as with other days, let's practice English by reading interesting articles. Soon, me or my family will make an overseas trip either to Japan, China, or Georgia. Let's read the article about what we should do before we board an airplane. This article is from my all-around favorite Reader's Digest, and the title here is "Here's the Dangerous Thing You Are Probably Forgetting to Do Before a Flight and Why It's Such a Big Problem." Design, get images, stock photos. Yeah, I like that kind of business ideas. Especially I could focus my ideas on some specialized industries, right? Instead of just all-around industries for stock images. This article is by Charlotte Hilton Anderson, published on December 19th, 2025. Yeah, if I lived in the States or if I lived in the Charlotte, North Carolina, probably I could have just said Charlotte instead of Charlotte at the first sight. So sorry about that, but if you like, I would like to live in the States for 1 to 3 years. Maybe I'll just curry a favor with you, or I could teach you the anti-cancer Tai Chi walk. I could teach you about Korea, or I could teach you about IT, right? Telecom business, or I could teach you about just goofing around. Yeah. You've triple checked your ID and arrived 2 hours early. Great. Now there's the thing you forgot that could actually ruin your flight. As a fresh-faced college grad, I was on a flight to Dallas for my first big job interview, and I was a wreck. Somewhere over Oklahoma, the nerves caught up with me. I started feeling hot. Wow, that's profound word, right? I was on a flight to Dallas for my big job interview. I was a wreck. The nerves caught up with me. I started feeling hot, then nauseated, right? Nauseated. Then distinctly like I was about to meet my breakfast again. Vomiting, right? I aimed a tiny air vent at my face. I tried deep breathing. I tried thinking about literally anything else. None of it worked. Reader, I used the barf bag. It remains the only time I've thrown up on a plane. I've since learned that my midnight flight ejection was caused by a surprisingly common problem for passengers, one with consequences potentially far more serious than needing to use that little paper pouch for its intended purpose. Unfortunately, many of us are so busy worrying about catastrophic what-ifs, turbulence, delays, ripped from the headlines, airplane disasters, delays, right? Ripped from the headlines, airline disasters, Whether we'll be seated next to someone who thinks airplane armrests are a single person amenity, that we make this surprisingly dangerous mistake. Okay, so read from the headlines, right? I think it has kind of obvious cliche, read from the headlines, but I've never seen a phrase with a hyphenated phrase for read from the headlines, right? It's something too simple to fix that flight attendants can't believe how often they see passengers get it wrong. We see it all the time. Sometimes it ends up being a medical emergency when it could have been easily avoided, says Loretta Hill, a JetBlue flight attendant with 10 years of experience. So what is this overlooked danger lurking in your pre-flight routine? Read on to find out the step you are overlooking, why it matters, and how to stay safer next time you fly. Get Reader's Digest's Read Up newsletter for more travel, tech, cleaning, humor, and fun facts all week long. Sagging becomes tight muscles. What are you likely forgetting to do before your flight? Drink water and lots of it. Yes, really. The thing standing between you and a potential medical emergency at 30,000 feet might just be a glass or 5 of H2O. And before you roll your eyes thinking this sounds like yet another wellness lecture from that friend who carries a gallon jug everywhere, hear me out. Dehydration during air travel is a shockingly common problem, and it's catching travelers off guard constantly. Okay, so dehydration, we gotta be careful, right? Jug. Who carries a gallon jug, right? Who carries a gallon jug? I would have said bottle, but jug, right, is also a good word. Carries a gallon jug. Think about what happens when you are getting ready to fly. You are running around packing, stressing about whether you remembered to turn off the coffee maker, standing in security lines and sprinting through the terminal because somehow gate B47 is always in a different time zone from the rest of the airport. Throughout all this chaos, drinking water is probably the last thing on your mind. You might even avoid drinking because you don't want to deal with these tiny airplane bathrooms or miss your boarding call while stuck in a rest line. I'm so guilty of this one. Carries a gallon jug. And then there's the security checkpoint issue. Airline travel is especially prone to dehydration as your fluids are taken away from you while passing through airline security. Really, says David Cutler, MD, a board-certified family medicine physician at Providence St. John's Health Center in Santa Monica, California. It's like they want us to shrivel into dried-out husks or be forced to buy a $10 bottle of water. Do people get more dehydrated when flying? Absolutely. The airplane cabin environment is basically a perfect storm for sucking the moisture right out of your body. Really, cabin humidity can drop below 20%, which is drier than most deserts. Your skin, your eyes, and your nasal passages are all working overtime to stay moist, while the recycled air does its best to turn you into human jerky. Damn. Turning you, this is basically good phrase. Absolutely. The airplane cabin environment is basically a perfect storm for sucking the moisture right out of your body, right? Cabin humidity can drop below 20%, which is drier than most deserts. Your skin, your eyes, and your nasal passages are all working overtime, to stay moist, working overtime to stay moist, while the recycled air does its best to turn you into humidity jerky. But it's not just the altitude working against you. Dr. Cutler explains that flying creates a uniquely dehydrating situation. Once you are on the airplane, which is a particularly dry environment, here not on an airplane, on the airplane, which is particularly dry environment, it may be a while before fluids become available, and even then there may be a cost, which further hinders easy access to correct dehydration. So yes, there's something about the high altitude and cabin conditions that genuinely makes dehydration worse. Combine that with the fact that you were probably already running on empty from your hectic pre-flight routine. Pre-flight routine. Hectic pre-flight routine. And you've got a recipe for trouble. And you've got a recipe for disaster, right? You've got a recipe for trouble. It's no surprise, another good expression, that flight attendants prioritize hydration as one of their top strategies for staying healthy on the job, Hill says. Hectic pre-flight routine. You've got a recipe for trouble. It's no surprise. What can happen when you are dehydrated on a flight? You've had people just get up and faint because they haven't had anything to eat or drink. Hill says, adding that falling in the cramped confines of an airline cabin, adds extra risk of injury. Confines, right? The symptoms of dehydration can range from mildly uncomfortable to medically serious, and they can escalate quickly. At the mild end, you might experience dry mouth, fatigue, and that general foggy feeling that makes even ordering a ginger ale from the beverage cart feel like a monumental decision. Monumental decision, I don't know, it's good expression, man. Good expression. Monumental decision. What the? But as dehydration progresses, things get worse. Dr. Cutler explains that moderate dehydration causes dry mouth, lack of sweating, decreased or dark-colored urine, fatigue, dizziness, or lightheadedness. These symptoms are unpleasant enough on solid ground, But in a pressurized cabin where you are trapped for years with nowhere to go, they become significantly more problematic. Severe dehydration is where things get genuinely scary. Little or no urine is made, and this can cause kidney damage. Confusion and altered mental status can cause errors in judgment, resulting in significant adverse health consequences. Right? Dr. Cutler wants. Okay, good. Rapid heart rate and rapid breathing can result in damaging heart and lung conditions. Low blood pressure can lead to passing out or eventually the state of shock where multiple organs may not be adequately perfused with circulating blood and thus damaged. Hill has seen her share of these in-flight emergencies. Passengers who skip eating and drinking before their flight sometimes faint, creating the kind of medical situation that can divert a flight or require an emergency landing. And as any experienced traveler knows, there are few things worse than being the reason an entire plane full of people misses their connections. When is this more likely to be a problem? Holiday travel is a prime time for dehydration disasters. Yes, I have some trouble with countable and uncountable noun, but I'm getting there, right? Holiday travel is not a prime. Holiday travel is prime time for dehydration disasters. And it's not hard to understand why you are stressed, you are pushed, you are rushed, airports are packed, and you are probably focused on getting to grandma's house rather than finding a water fountain. Yeah, you are rushed. You rush, right? We say you rush, but you are rushed. The period between Thanksgiving and New Year's Day is the busiest time to fly, which means longer security lines, more gate area chaos, and less time to think about basic self-care, right? Self-care, you are rushed, prime time. Long-haul and international flights amplify the risk significantly. When you are in the air for 10 or more hours, even mild dehydration at takeoff can become serious dehydration by landing. The longer you are exposed to that dry cabin air without adequate fluid intake, the worse things get. Certain populations are at a greater risk of dehydration. Demographics. Dr. Cutler says, notes. In Korea, we have pork cutlet, beef cutlet, right? Dr. Cutler's name sounds like a cutlet to me, but I'm sure he's a very good doctor, maybe handsome. This includes the very young, the elderly, pregnant women, and those with underlying health conditions which may impair the ability to recognize or correct dehydration. Oh, and new college grads who are very anxious about their upcoming job interview. I realized later that I hadn't drank anything that day, and combined with my nerves, dehydration likely led to my vomiting attack. Delayed flights are another sneaky culprit. You are stuck at the gate. You don't want to leave to find water. What if they start boarding? And before you know it, you've been sitting there for 3 extra hours without a sip. Red-eye flights pose their own challenges. You are exhausted, might skip dinner to sleep on the plane, and wake up somewhere over Nebraska feeling like you've been licking sandpaper. I don't want to lick sandpaper, right? Licking sandpaper. Here, uncountable, right? Licking sandpaper. Like drinking water, right? Sandpaper size can vary. So uncountable. Cars can be countable. There's also the alcohol factor. Here offers a pointed reminder. The effects of alcohol are doubled in the air. Don't take Xanax or drink. If you are calming your pre-flight nerves with a cocktail or two at the airport bar, you are actually accelerating your dehydration while simultaneously impairing your judgment about how much water you need. Not the best combination when you are about to be sealed in a metal tube for several hours. Metal tube, right? Airplane cabin, airline cabin. What should you do? What should you do to prevent this? Preventing flight-related dehydration is straightforward. You just have to make it a priority instead of an afterthought. Another good sentence you can use. You just have to make a mandate. You just have to make it a priority instead of an afterthought. You just have to make it a priority instead of an afterthought. You just have to make it a priority instead of an afterthought. Here's your hydration game plan. Start hydrating the night before. If you have an early morning flight, treat it like you'd treat the night before a big race or event. Dr. Cutler recommends preparing for such a situation with extra fluids beforehand. Drink plenty of water with dinner and have a glass before bed. Okay. I will not drink alcohol anymore on the airplane or when I am in a pre-flight routine. At least. Eat before you fly. You might not realize it, but food is a significant source of hydration. Dr. Cutler points out that food in general is about 75% water. So make sure you are drinking fluids if you are not eating to help prevent dehydration. If you are skipping the overpriced airport food, compensate by drinking more water. Overpriced the overpriced airport food, the overpriced airport food, the overpriced airport food, the overpriced the overpriced airport food, the overpriced airport food, the overpriced airport food. Bring an empty water bottle through security. This is the single most effective thing you can do. TSA will confiscate your liquids, but an empty reusable bottle is perfectly fine. Fill it up at a water fountain after you clear security, and you will have free, unlimited hydration for your entire journey. Consider adding electrolytes for long flights. Plain water is great, but Dr. Cutler notes that if drinking more than a quart of water, it is best to have some electrolytes, that is, minerals in the water to prevent diluting out the body's naturally occurring minerals, like sodium, electrolyte tablets and packets, or even a sports drink purchased in the terminal can help you stay balanced on longer journeys. Don't wait until you are thirsty. By the time you feel thirsty, you are already somewhat dehydrated. Sip consistently throughout your time at the airport and during the flight. Yes, this might mean more bathroom trips, but that's actually a bonus. Getting up to walk around is good for preventing blood clots. Go easy on the coffee and alcohol. Both are diuretics that increase fluid loss. If you need your morning coffee, balance it with extra water. And if you are going to enjoy a pre-flight drink, alternate with glasses of water. Your flight attendants and your body will thank you. Set reminders if you are forgetful. Seriously, put drink water alarms on your phone for your travel day. It sounds ridiculous, but when you are juggling boarding passes, carry-ons, and all the other details of modern air travel, a little nudge can make all the difference. I agree. A little nudge can make all the difference. A little nudge can make all the difference. A little nudge can make all the difference. Let's be honest, your next flight will likely be uncomfortable enough without adding dehydration to the mix. So before your next trip, do your part and the flight crew do yourself and the flight crew who might otherwise have to deal with a medical emergency a favor and drink up. Do yourself, right? A favor. Do yourself a favor. A little nudge can make a huge difference. A little nudge can make all the difference. Good expression. A little nudge can a little nudge can make all the difference. A little nudge can make all the difference. Related, flying out of one of these airports, prepare to spend more on parking. About the experts, Loretta Hill is a flight attendant with JetBlue who has been flying for 10 years. She has first-hand experience managing in-flight medical emergencies and passenger wellness issues. David M. Kotler, MD, is a board-certified family medicine physician at Providence St. John's Health Center in Santa Monica, California. He specializes in preventive care and patient education. Hey, by the way, I'm an expert on anti-cancer or cancer treatment or cancer prevention walking. Yes, I learned that walking 8 years ago, and I've been practicing it ever since. It was developed by Guo Lin, a Chinese woman who died of fatigue after she enjoyed her life after 7 surgeries to her body because of cancer spread. So it's good, verified, and I like it. If you have a nasal problem, if you have a breathing problem, if you have a pulmonary related problems, I also recommend this anti-cancer Tai Walk. It's for both preventive and treating cancers. Why Trust Us? Reader's Digest has published hundreds of travel stories that help readers explore the world safely, easily, and affordably. We regularly cover topics such as the best places to visit and the best times to visit them, tips and tricks to zoom through airport security, flight attendant secrets, hotel room hacks, and more. We are committed to producing high-quality content by writers with expertise and experience in their field in consultation with relevant qualified experts. We rely on reputable primary sources, including government and professional organizations and academic institutions, as well as our writers' personal experiences where appropriate. We verify all facts and data, back them with credible sourcing, and revisit them over time to ensure they remain accurate and up to date. Read more about our team, our contributors, and our editorial policies. So from this article, we just exposed to many good experiences, such as a little nudge can make all the difference, right? And when we are rushed, pre-flight routine, dehydration, do yourself a favor. Yeah, prime time. Travel is prime time for disasters. It's a recipe for a disaster. It's a recipe for problem, trouble. It's just let's go back and see what I stored before. I was a wreck. The nerves caught up with me. 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 I was a wreck. Ripped from the headlines. Airplane disasters. Carries a gallon jug. The airplane cabin environment is basically a perfect storm for sucking the moisture right out of your body. Cabin humidity can drop below 20%, which is drier than most deserts. Your skin, your eyes, and your nasal passages are all working overtime to stay moist, while the recycled air does its best to turn you into human jerky. Wow, so recycled air is terrible, right? The recycled air does its best to turn you into human jerky. The airplane cabin environment is basically a perfect storm for sucking the moisture right out of your body. Cabin humidity can drop below 20%, which is drier than most deserts. Your skin, your eyes, and your nasal passages are all working overtime to stay moist. All working overtime to stay moist, like a overpriced the overpriced airport food. While the recycled air does its best to turn you into human jerky. All working overtime to stay moist, while the recycled air does its best to turn you into human jerky. Hectic pre-flight routine. You've got a recipe for trouble. It's no surprise. Monumental decision. A monumental decision. causes dry mouth, right? Holiday travel is prime time for dehydration disasters. Holiday travel is prime time for dehydration disasters. You are rushed. Self-care, self-care. Licking sandpaper, licking sandpaper, licking sandpaper, licking sandpaper. You just have to make it a priority instead of an afterthought. You just have to make it a priority instead of an afterthought. Instead of an afterthought. You just have to make it a priority instead of an afterthought. The overpriced airport food. A little nudge can make all the difference. Yeah, I'm just curious about my stock prices suddenly. Let's see how it goes. So Samsung Electronics, Hyundai Motors, Kia Motors, Samsung General, Samsung Trade, LG Electronics, Samsung Electricity, Samsung Electric, Hyundai Glovis, Hyundai Mobis, Lotte or Lati, Samsung SDI, good. Xinpeng Pharmaceutical, Zhonggendang, Hanjin Airplane, POSCO Holdings, POSCO International, Intel, POSCO Future M, Bristol Myers Squibb, Medipost, Micron Technology, SK Hynix. Wow, amazing. It will become 100 million. Damn. Amazing, amazing, man. That's amazing. Well, that's it. But before we go, let's go over the words that we should remember. A little nudge can make all the difference. The overpriced airport food, you have to make it a priority instead of an afterthought, right? A holiday travel is a prime time for dehydration disaster. You are rushed. A hectic pre-flight routine. You just have to make it a priority instead of an afterthought. They are all working overtime to stay moist, while the recycled air does its best to turn you into human jerky. You just licking sandpaper. It's just hard to understand. Self-care, a monumental decision. It's a perfect recipe for trouble. It's no surprise. Cabin humidity can drop below 20%, which is drier than most deserts. Your skin, your eyes, and your nasal passages are all working overtime to stay moist, while the recycled air does its best to turn you into human jerky. Carries a gallon jug. I was wrecked. The nerves caught up with me. Ripped from the headlines, right? Yeah, that's a 301 that I picked up yesterday while working in a park. So I am 301 richer and than before. AI is amazing, man. Ripped out of the headlines, right? Ripped out of the headlines describes a story, event, or product that is heavily inspired by or closely mirrors recent sensational news events, often used by the Law and Order franchise to highlight their procedural drama's connection to real-world headlines, implying a dramatic, timely, and attention-grabbing quality as it torn directly from a newspaper. Ripped from the headlines. Ripped from the headlines. Okay, so basically, is wow, I experienced some event that is similar, which appeared on the headlines on the newspaper, right? So ripped from their headlines. Ripped from the headlines, all dashed, connected with dashes. Ripped from the headlines. Well, that's it. Thanks for listening. Have a great hump day. Bye-bye.